The war was over. At least, that's what the Council had declared. Across the Orion Arm, star systems still smoldered, fractured fleets drifted through silent voids, and entire civilizations struggled to remember what peace even felt like. But officially, formally, the Great Fracture War had ended 5 standard cycles ago. And now, for the first time since its beginning, representatives of every surviving species gathered in one place. The Hall of Concordance. A station built not for war, but for memory. Commander Elias Varn didn't belong there. At least that's what most of the room thought. Humans were new, unpredictable, dangerous, and worst of all, they had arrived late to the war and ended it. No one quite understood how. Elias stood near the rear of the chamber, his uniform plain compared to the elaborate ceremonial armor of the other delegates. Towering insectoid generals shimmered under refracted light. Serpentine diplomats coiled with quiet grace. Crystalline beings hummed faintly, resonating with frequencies no human ear could fully interpret. And yet, as Elias watched them, he noticed something strange. They were all tense. Not the tension of hostility, the tension of grief. The ceremony was simple in theory. Each species would present a remembrance, something of their culture that honored those lost in the war. Songs, rituals, visual displays, harmonic frequencies, whatever their kind used to mourn. It was meant to unify them. Instead, it felt like reopening a wound. The first presentation began. A towering Karath warlord stepped forward, his armored limbs clicking softly against the obsidian floor. His species had lost nearly half their population defending the outer sectors. He activated a device. The chamber filled with a low, pulsing vibration, like a heartbeat slowed to near death. The sound resonated in Elias's chest, uncomfortable and heavy. Several Karath in the audience lowered their heads. When it ended, no one spoke. Next came the Lyrathi. Their offering was light, fractured beams that formed shifting shapes in the air. Elias realized slowly that the shapes were names. Millions of them. Names of the fallen. The light flickered as if struggling to remain stable. As if memory itself was breaking. One by one, the species presented their grief. And with each one, the silence in the chamber grew heavier. Not respectful silence. Oppressive silence. Because no matter how beautiful the tributes were, something was missing. Something fundamental. Elias knew what it was. He just didn't know if he had the right to say it. Human representative. The voice came suddenly, echoing across the hall. Elias looked up. At the center platform stood a member of the council, a being of shifting geometry, known only as a harmonist. You have not yet presented your remembrance. Every eye in the chamber turned toward him. Elias felt his throat tighten. He hadn't planned to speak. Humanity wasn't even supposed to present anything. They were observers, technically. Latecomers to a war that had nearly annihilated the galaxy. We don't have a formal presentation, Elias said carefully. A ripple moved through the crowd. Suspicion. Murmurs. The harmonist tilted slightly, its form refracting light. Every species remembers, it said. Surely humans do as well. Elias hesitated. They did. God, they did. But human remembrance wasn't easy. It wasn't clean. He took a slow breath. We remember differently, he said. Then show us, the harmonist replied. Elias stepped forward. Each step felt heavier than the last. He reached the center platform and stood there, surrounded by beings who had seen centuries, millennia, entire galactic histories unfold. And all of them were waiting. We don't have light displays, Elias began, or resonance fields, or memory constructs. He paused. What we have is older. He reached into his uniform and pulled out a small device. A simple audio emitter. Primitive by galactic standards. What you're about to hear, he said, is from Earth. From before we ever left our system. A few delegates shifted. Curiosity. Skepticism. Elias swallowed. It's in a dead language. The room stilled. Even the faint hum of the station seemed to fade. Elias closed his eyes and pressed play. At first there was nothing. Then, a voice. Soft. Human. Female. Singing. It wasn't loud. It wasn't grand. It wasn't even technically perfect. But it carried something no one in that chamber had presented. Pain. Raw. Unfiltered. Deeply personal pain. The language was unknown to them. Ancient even by human standards. But meaning didn't require translation. The melody rose slowly, trembling at the edges. It felt like loss. Like someone reaching for something that was already gone. Elias opened his eyes. He didn't look at the audience. He couldn't, because he knew what they were hearing. A mother singing for a child who would never come home. A soldier whispering goodbye in a language no one else would understand. A world mourning itself. The voice cracked, just slightly. And somehow, that made it worse. More real. Across the chamber, something shifted. A Kareth general straightened. Not out of protocol. Out of instinct. The song continued. No instruments. No enhancements. Just a voice. And the weight of everything it carried. One by one, something extraordinary began to happen. A Lyrathai diplomat, whose species expressed emotion only through light, dimmed their entire form to a deep, steady glow. A sign of mourning. A Serpentine War veteran uncoiled fully, lowering their head to the ground. The crystalline beings began to resonate, not in their usual harmonic patterns, but in something uneven, almost broken. And then, the Kareth general raised his arm, slowly, deliberately, and struck his chest. A salute. Elias felt his breath catch. Another followed, then another. Across the chamber, alien veterans, beings who had never shared culture, language, or biology, began to stand. Not because they were told to, because they understood. They didn't know the words, but they knew grief. The song reached its final verse. The voice softened, faded, like someone slipping away. And then, silence. Elias lowered the device. His hands were shaking. The chamber remained still. Not a single being moved. Then, slowly, the harmonist shifted. For the first time, it said, its voice quieter than before, "We have heard remembrance that does not preserve the past." Elias looked up. "What do you mean?" The harmonist's form pulsed faintly. "Every tribute before yours sought to record, to archive, to ensure the fallen are not forgotten." It paused. "Yours reminds us that they are already gone." The weight of that settled over the room. "You do not preserve grief," the harmonist continued. "You relive it." Elias exhaled slowly. "Yeah," he said. "That's kind of our thing." A faint ripple moved through the chamber. Not discomfort. Understanding. The Kareth general stepped forward. He approached Elias, not as an enemy, not as a rival, but as something else. A fellow survivor. "What is the name of this song?" the general asked. Elias hesitated. "It doesn't translate well," he said. "Try." Elias swallowed. "It's called Lacrimosa." The general repeated the word slowly, struggling with the unfamiliar sounds. Then he nodded. "We will remember it," he said. And in that moment, Elias realized something profound. The war hadn't just ended. It had left a silence behind. A silence no one knew how to fill. Until now. Because humans didn't fill silence with perfection. They filled it with truth. The ceremony didn't continue immediately. No one rushed to present their own tribute, because suddenly those tributes felt incomplete. Instead, something unexpected happened. The Lyrathi approached Elias. "Will you share more?" they asked. Then the serpentine diplomat. "Other songs?" Even the crystalline beings pulsed in quiet inquiry. Elias blinked. "You want more?" "Yes," the harmonist said. "Because now we understand." Elias looked down at the small device in his hand, at the thousands of recordings stored within it. Songs of war, songs of loss, songs of hope. Humanity had spent centuries turning pain into music, not to erase it, but to survive it. He looked up, and, for the first time since entering the chamber, he smiled. "All right," he said. "I think I've got a few." And so, in the Hall of Concordance, where once only silence and fragmented grief had existed, a new kind of remembrance began. Not perfect, not clean, not easy, but real. And across the galaxy, for the first time since the war ended, the fallen were not just remembered. They were mourned. Together. Ending. Years later, historians would mark that day as something far greater than a ceremony. They would call it the first true peace. Not because treaties were signed, not because borders were redrawn, but because for the first time the galaxy learned how to grieve as one. And at the center of it all was a simple human truth, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer the universe is not strength, not victory, not even hope,